The episode begins with an on-screen introductory text. In 1633, Japan had closed its borders to the entire world. Anyone other than the pure Japanese was branded as a monster. Despite this, a legendary swordsman was born. The scene opens with a samurai walking into a noodle shop with glasses, a sword, and a hat with a serious demeanor. The samurai is a woman in disguise. The samurai ordered food with Ringo, who had an amputated arm but considered this shop to make the best soba noodles. There's also a flesh trader, Hachiman, in the noodle shop. He had bought women for sex trafficking. He was rude and obnoxious. Ringo makes a mistake and Hachiman pulls out a pistol. This interests the samurai as it isn't entirely Japanese made. When Hachiman tries to get over smart with him, he cuts his fingers off. Hachiman reveals that Heiji Shindo had sold the gun to him but calls him names when he sees the samurai's blue eyes. Ringo is impressed with the samurai and decides to follow her. Ringo asks her to let him learn under her, but she refuses and ties him to a tree. On her journey, she stops by a temple, thanks the gods for helping her, and prays for her sword father's well-being. We now see a flashback to the time she was a child and was bullied by a few boys. They fight, and the bully is about to attack her with a huge stone, but is interrupted by a blue comet falling in front of them. The bullies run away. The samurai sees an old blind man inspect the comet and take it with him. The girl helps the man and goes to his house. She was asked to leave after being fed. She pretends to leave but comes back and spends the night there. The girl wakes up the following day to realize the blind man knows she hasn't gone and instead asks her to run some errands. At present, the samurai is in Kyoto looking for a Shindo dojo. She meets some members from the dojo who lead her to a brothel. The samurai sees that Ringo has followed her there and tells the woman there to keep him with them for 3 nights, and she pays for it. The women also tell her how to reach the Shindo dojo. On the way to the dojo, she sees Princess Akemi in her palanquin. Princess Akemi is asked to marry someone she does not like for the kingdom's benefit. However, she visits her father to persuade him to marry someone of her choice. She and her advisor devise a plan and convince him to allow her to marry Teijin, a reputed and talented samurai. She meets him in secret to give the good news. The samurai reaches the dojo and he is not allowed to meet the master. We see a flashback to when a young samurai learned from her sword father to wield a sword. The samurai had learned how to make a kitchen knife and a sword. One day, she is caught practicing with a sword and tells her sword father she wants to be the best swordsman. She tells him that she is a mixed-race child. Sword father lets her practice at night. In the present, the students of the Shindo dojo are trying to kick the samurai out forcefully, but she fights and defeats everyone single-handedly. Teijin is called, and the samurai recognizes him as the bully from her childhood. They duel and her glasses fall off and Teijin recognizes her. She defeats Teijin, but the master of the dojo arrives. The samurai asks the master where she could find his brother. He led the samurai to Tanabe Island under the Genko clan's protection. Master of Shindo dojo apologizes to his brother and sends the 4 fangs to eliminate the samurai. The samurai treats her wounds under a waterfall and rests. We see a flashback to when she left the sword father, telling him she was ready to take on her enemies. In the present, the 4 fangs are on their way when she hears a rustle in the bushes. She is prepared to fight, and out comes Ringo, and he realizes the samurai is a woman.
Episode 2 begins with Ringo's father cleaning up the blood from his restaurant floor. The 4 fangs arrive, mercenaries in masks. They ask the man about the samurai and he tells them everything that happened. Meanwhile, Ringo keeps following the samurai and tries to convince her to let him tag along. She refuses. He insists that he can be useful. At a travel junction, the samurai nearly gets into trouble when she realizes she can't bribe her way through the guards. Ringo comes to her rescue as he has a travel pass for 2 people, courtesy of his father's noodle shop. Afterwards, Ringo makes his case to be an apprentice again, and this time she relinquishes. Akemi counsels Teijin, who is nursing his wounds after his battle with the samurai. When she says the fight was a dishonorable attack and not a proper duel, Teijin decides to go after the samurai and challenge him properly. Ringo and the samurai are on their way to find a boat to get to the island where Heiji Shindo is. The samurai reveals she doesn't want to kill Heiji Shindo but the white man he protects. They reach a seaside town but find that a festival called the Hadaka Matsuri is going on. She'll have to wait for the next day to sail. While they wait, the samurai ties a bell around Ringo's foot since he keeps sneaking up on her. Meanwhile, Teijin follows their trail, but he's not the only one. The 4 fangs are not far behind and they leave a fair amount of blood behind them. Heiji Shindo is waiting for a signal from the 4 fangs, which means they've killed the samurai. He talks with a white man with red hair and their conversation reveals that the white man isn't allowed to leave this island except during 1 month in the spring. However, he has plans to meet the shogun and change that. With time to spare, the samurai trains in the woods and then bathes in the sea. A flashback shows a man approaching the sword father. He's a bookbinder but wants a sword to avenge his father's death at the hands of a drunk ronin. The sword father agrees to make a sword for him. We see that he calls the young samurai Mizu. When Mizu tries practicing swordplay with the customer, he beats her and makes fun of her for being a soft half-breed. That's when she begins binding her chest. She helps the sword father make the sword, but it ends up breaking off at one point. The sword father presents it to the customer, but he grows angry. He's about to hit Mizu, but the sword father stops him. From the feel of his hand, the sword father realizes that he is not a bookbinder but an assassin. The man simply boasts about his many kills, calling himself blood-soaked Shiaki. He takes the sword and goes on his own way. At present, Tegan watches Mizu practicing in the woods. He sees her cut through a giant tree and gets frustrated when he can't do the same. Akemi is called to see her father, who presents her to a couple of men. They represent the shogun's younger son, who is looking for a new bride. She is told she must blacken her teeth, as the son prefers it that way. After they leave, Akemi begs her father to reconsider, but he won't be moved. They leave for the wedding in 5 days. Sometime later, the steadfast Akemi is about to run away while pretending to go shopping for silks. Siki, of course, realizes and tries dissuading her. When she doesn't change her mind, he decides to run away with her. Ringo is enjoying the town's festivities when he learns of a ritual where a priestess throws a magical stick into the sea, and the person who catches it gains magical powers. He then tries the town's best noodle shop and is so mesmerized by their noodles that the owner offers him a job. As the drums start beating to signal the start of the ritual, the four fangs catch up to Mizu. In the town, everybody takes off their clothes and jumps into the water. The mercenaries corner Mizu at the edge of a cliff. She takes a step back and leaps off. When they move forward to check, they find her standing on a small outcrop on the cliffside. The fangs all jump down as well. One by one, Mizu cuts down the fangs despite the sheerness of the mountainside. The third one has her fall all the way down to the shore. The final member of the fangs turns out to be none other than blood-soaked Shiaki. They fight and Mizu gets injured when she's distracted by Teijin, hiding in the rocks. Just as Shiaki is about to strike her down from behind, she throws her sword, which goes straight through him. The priestess throws the stick into the water and chaos ensues. Ringo catches the stick in his mouth. But all is not over for Mizu as Teijin comes out of the shadows insistent on getting his honor back. They move towards each other, but Mizu collapses. Teijin stands with his sword raised over her, which brings the end of Blue Eye Samurai Episode 2.
The episode begins with a flashback to the time Mizu was born. We hear two men contemplating killing the child. Between arguments, one man killed the other and asked a lady to take the child away. In the present, Teijin hesitates to kill Mizu, but is interrupted by Ringo, who takes his master's safety. Teijin tells Ringo where they can be safe. Mizu is in pain and in a sleep-induced state. She remembers her childhood when she was locked away in a hut and asked never to leave if she wanted to live. Meanwhile, Heiji Shindo was asked by the angry white man to kill the samurai. Ringo treats Mizu and Teijin stays with them. Teijin and Mizu agree on a duel date, and Teijin defeats Mizu and dies in his hands. A strong, big man arrives and gives a message that Heiji Shindo has asked Mizu to join him for a cup of tea. Teijin tells her it was a trap, but Mizu begins the journey to meet Heiji Shindo. Ringo and Teijin join. Akemi is adamant about finding Teijin, but her advisor Siki tries to warn her of her difficulties. As expected, they were stopped and looted by brigands. They then get a ride on a cart. On their way, Mizu and Teijin talk about where they grew up. Teijin provokes Mizu. They fight but stop after a while and continue on the journey. Ringo shares with Teijin that he wanted to achieve greatness. Ringo is left with a strong man while Teijin and Mizu cautiously reach the location. They were not met with an ambush, but Heiji Shindo was waiting for them. Akemi wakes up from her sleep, realizes they are further away from their destination, and wants to return home. Siki talks about the only two paths women have, and this annoys her. She walks into a tavern where sex workers are bought and sold. She pretends to be a sex worker and gets a ride to her destination with the man there. At the tea party, Heiji Shindo reveals where to find the white man. He proposes an offer, which Mizu declines. Heiji Shindo reveals the other options. Mizu cuts his hand off and archers around the mountain start to attack. Mizu and Teijin try and escape. One arrow hits Teijin's leg. Ringo has poisoned the strong man and comes to rescue Teijin and Mizu. They reach safety and Mizu knocks Teijin down. Mizu and Ringo leave to find the white man Fowler. Teijin wakes up to a letter promising to have a duel in autumn once he has got his revenge. He is annoyed, but someone drags him away. Heiji Shindo tells Fowler that the samurai is a monster and will find him. Teijin is brought inside in front of the men in a sake barrel to reveal more information about Mizu.